And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by George Harris. And George Harris writes, Gio, that's short for my real name, which is Giovanni. The Eternals movie premiere was last night, and you filthy dog, got to go. How was the movie? Was it as good as your sources of Marvel said it was? Also, when you go to a premiere as a media member, how do you enter the theater? Do you get to walk the red carpet, or do they have another entrance for the unwashed masses? Do they make you get there earlier than the stars of the movie? Thanks, and bring on the filthy. All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. Well, let's address the last part of that first, because it's an interesting question. Like, when you do attend to these premieres, how do you enter? Here's what my experience has been. Generally speaking, you show up, you go to the will call that shows, you were an invited guest. You show them your ID, you get a badge, and all that kind of stuff, and then you enter the carpet. And for the most part, you walk the same carpet that the stars do. Now, what normally happens is that there will be a part of the carpet that everybody can walk down, right? But then there'll be a little like roped off area that if you're not one of the big celebrities, you walk behind this roped area, because that roped area will be for a stretch of the red carpet where the press are. So where all the photographers are and all the people doing interviews. And so they want to reserve that space just for the celebrities coming down that part of the carpet. And you're still walking down the carpet. You're just at the edge of it, walking behind like this rope, right? So you walk down there. That's where you saw that picture that I put up a little bit earlier of me being behind. Let me see if I can bring this up again, of me, like when I was standing right behind Angelina Jolie, because we were at that part of the carpet where press are to interview the celebrities, and I just walk at the edge of the carpet behind a rope. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm standing right behind Angelina Jolie. Click. And
right.
Like a tourist, like a pathetic tourist, I took a picture. But then once you get past the press area, there's like a display part of the red carpet where they'll have like the big banners and some of the costumes on display and some different things. And that's where the two parts of the carpet then merge, and then you're walking right. Like, I have literally walked into a premiere literally making sure I don't step on the back of Harrison Ford's shoes. Like, I've literally walked into a premiere right behind Harrison Ford, walking behind him down the hallway and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so for the most part, you do walk the carpet. There's just a part of it that's a little bit segregated so that the celebrities can get, the press can get to the celebrities and do that interview stuff without confusing the press or causing too much of a roadblock. So there's that. Anyway, hopefully you found that interesting. If not, so be it. As far as the movie goes, I put up my out of the theater reaction, which wasn't exactly out of the theater because, Rob, I shot my out of the theater reaction there, but it was so loud you could barely hear my audio. So I had to wait till I got back home, record my reaction. I put it up online. You're seeing some of these key phrases thrown around, and I totally endorse these key phrases that everybody seems to be using because they're absolutely accurate. It is dense. You're going to hear that word a lot. There is so much mythology packed into this movie that I still feel, Rob, you and I were talking before the show started today. I still feel like I'm unpacking a lot of it. I still feel like I'm processing the movie, right? And I don't mean that as a good or a bad thing. I'm just saying I am still processing a lot of what I saw.
Sure.
The second thing you're going to hear a lot about, it is probably the most unique. And look, every MCU film tries to make itself very different from other MCU films. But at the end of the day, they still, even though they're very unique from each other, they still feel like MCU films. This movie does not feel like a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. It feels like a Chloe Zhao movie. And that's hard to quantify in words. You just got to see the movie and you'll know what I mean. And to be honest, I don't know how average Marvel movie-going fans will respond to that because, like I said, all the Marvel movies do a great job of making themselves very unique and individual, but at the end of the day, you still can tell it feels like a Marvel movie still. This doesn't feel like a Marvel movie to me. And you can take that however you want. It doesn't feel like a Marvel movie to me.
Why do you say that, though? Because I've seen a lot of people online say it. What about it doesn't feel like a Marvel movie? The way it's shot or...
Dude, it's while the reaction embargo has been lifted, the review embargo has not. So I can't get into details. I mean, you'll see later tonight, my friend. You'll see it for yourself. But I mean, it's just the nature of the story. The fact that I'm trying to stay as totally ambiguous as possible. The nature of the story, the depth of the characters, the history, the mythology, and Rob, a bigger scope than anything the MCU has ever done. A far bigger scope, to the point, Rob, that I even put on Twitter today that the scope of this movie is so big that it almost makes all of the rest of the MCU and everything that's happened in the MCU up to this point seem trite and meaningless. That's how vast the scope of this thing is. It's incredible. Look, I will just tell you this. I immensely enjoyed myself. Like watching this, I felt like this is a movie that I think even Marty Scorsese would go and sit down and come out and say, that was cinema. Like, I really do. I feel like Scorsese would come out of this movie, who has, traditionally been very critical of comic book films. I think Scorsese would come out of this movie and go, that's cinema. But I am still processing, and I need to see it again tonight. And that's why you guys don't know. So I was telling Rob before the show started today that I am dying for him to see this so I can just talk to him about it and all this kind of stuff. But let's go over and see what some other people have been saying about Eternals, shall we? Here's some of the other early reactions that we got from Eternals. We've got our friend Eric Davis. I love Eric Davis. Eric Davis writes, Marvel's Eternals is spectacularly weird and rich with a new MCU mythology that makes it feel separate from everything else. It's honestly refreshing. There's a bittersweetness to the film that you feel in its sunset shots, a definite Chloe Zhao touch. It's soulful and thoughtful. You don't often hear terms like that when talking about an MCU movie, right? All right, so we go on to Chrissy Haymore writes, I saw a movie tonight, Eternals. Is cool as hell. Drags a bit in the second act. I disagree with that, but I went in knowing nothing about this movie and I walked out a fan. Next one comes to us from Perry Nemiroff, who of course I've worked with. Eternals is dense. There's that word I told you you're probably going to hear a lot of. Eternals is dense, and I felt the weight of the exposition often. The movie's at its best when the focus is on the Eternals recreating their family. The humor of it and the passion when they fight for each other and everything they love. Also, Angelina in the MCU is everything. I loved Angelina Jolie in this, by the way. Jack McBrien writes, Eternals is epic in every sense of the word. It's a story that is more massive, but simultaneously more down to earth than the MCU has ever been. The passion with everyone involved had for this movie is present in every scene, and it needs to be seen on the biggest screen you can find. I completely agree with that, because Rob, cinematography-wise, I think this is also the most beautiful MCU film I've seen. You got to see it on the biggest screen possible. Let's see. Aaron Couch writes, Eternals, wow, a lot to unpack. I use that word myself, unpack. If Marvel movies are a Venn diagram, variations with the overlap, this movie is off the charts, hands down the most different of any of their films. Geek Vibe Nations writes, fresh off her Oscar win, Chloe Zhao doesn't miss a step with Marvel's Eternals. Eternals is one of the most visually stunning comic films we've seen. Zhao has a great eye for detail, and we see that with her set pieces and character designs, which pays homage to the comics. Last one we'll read here comes from Anthony, who writes, Chloe Zhao's Eternals is absolutely fantastic. The cookie cutter Marvel template is thrown out the window, and you're given an enthralling experience, a must watch this year. Cersei, Icarus, Kingo, Athena, Phastos, Druig, all that kind of stuff. So you're hearing it. And Rob, I think what a lot of people and myself, like my wife straight up asked me last night, Rob, she goes, okay, but did you prefer this or Shang-Chi? I'm like, oh God, they are two such fundamentally different movies that are trying to deliver two fundamentally different experiences. If I had my shoulders pressed against the wall and I had to pick one, I think right now I lean towards Shang-Chi. But this, again, this is just, you can tell I'm still struggling with how to unpack the whole thing. It's just so weird and different. I will say this, I'll tell everybody this. There is a scene late in the movie that has one of the worst CGI shots I've seen in a long time. I'm just going to throw that out there. When you guys see the movie, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, quite an experience. Anyway, Rob, your thoughts, questions you have that I might be able to address or answer?
Well, I mean, the thing that people are saying that I really enjoy is that Marvel is breaking free of their formula. And I think that's great. I mean, Chloe Zhao also, she talked about wanting to shoot on location, and I think people are really responding to that. I mean, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is, you know, they shoot a lot of it on green screen, they shoot a lot of it in Atlanta, and that's fine. But to be able to go out and have a film, I mean, you can tell from the trailers, it's shot on location in a lot of areas. There's probably a lot more texture to it than we're used to. I'm looking forward to that. And for Marvel to have the, because they have the security now with what they've been able to accomplish, that they can go out and do these innovative things, I think it can only be great for their brand. And hopefully they'll be able to go do more of that kind of thing. And the fact that this is so different, I'm just excited to see it. Because, you know, I love comic book adaptations, and I've been reading comic books my whole life, and the Celestials, the idea of the Celestials, it's very big sci-fi Jack Kirby ideas. We had a lot of that with Ragnarok, and I can't wait to see more of that with this. So I'm just excited, man.
Tell you what, I don't personally consider telling you guys something that is not, and not something that you should never have thought was in the movie. So I don't mind telling you guys something that's not in the movie, something that you never should have even thought was. If you don't even want to hear something that's not in the movie, I don't know how some people say telling you something that's not in the movie is a spoiler. It's not. But I'm going to put up my hand right now because I'm going to tell you something that is not in the movie, okay? So hit mute, and then when I put my hand down, that's when you can unmute, okay? But I feel, because I'm seeing some people spreading this around online, and just to let you know so you don't get your expectations cued, okay? So hit mute if you don't want to hear about something that's not in the movie, all right? Ready? I've given you warning. Okay, here we go. There's no X-Men in the movie, okay? There are no X-Men. I saw some people running around writing a line saying, the X-Men get introduced in Eternals. There are no X-Men nor references to the X-Men in this movie, okay? Got that? So if you hear that, know it's bullshit, and don't get your expectations set for that. So, okay, ready? Done talking about it. Hand is going down. There, you can unmute now. There we go. Okay. So, yeah, guys, look, by the way, when we saw the cast for this movie, I didn't quite know what to make of the cast, other than the fact that, holy crap, they got Angelina Jolie and Salma Hayek in the same thing, and Gemma Chan. I love Gemma Chan, but she was already in the MCU. She was in Captain Marvel, but they brought her back again in a totally different character. Yeah, and I will tell you this too. We heard, because Rob, you and I were talking about this, we had heard Kevin Feige kind of suggest at one point that this movie, that you could kind of consider Gemma Chan as the lead of this movie. There's no almost maybe about it. Gemma Chan is the lead of this movie. She's absolutely the lead. I mean, every character in the Eternals gets good, significant story and screen time. They all do. It's a very balanced film. But I think almost everybody walking out of the theater, if you were to ask them, who do you think was the lead character? I think pretty much everybody would say it was probably Gemma Chan. It's not that she has head and shoulders more content than everybody else. It's just that clearly she's the one who was the lead. So, and she's great in it. She's great in it. Salma Hayek is great in it. The guy who plays Gilgamesh, I can't remember the actor's name, the guy from Train to Busan who plays Gilgamesh is great. Oh my God, Kumail Nanjiani is awesome in this movie. Kumail Nanjiani is so great in this movie. I have been a big fan of Kumail Nanjiani's ever since his movie The Big Sick. Even when he's in a terrible movie like Stuber, and oh my God, that movie sucks. But even when he's in a terrible movie like Stuber, I really like Kumail Nanjiani, and he shines. But every character is great. Anyway, yeah, I can't go into specifics or anything like that. Once the review embargo lifts and we can do our full actual review, and we can talk a little bit more in depth about the story structures and what happens in Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 without getting spoilery, I look forward to doing that, and I cannot wait to do the open spoiler discussion of this next month. But yeah, there's that. And Rob, I cannot wait for you to watch this movie tonight. I'm really looking forward to watching it with you.
I can't wait either.
All right, guys, question is for you. Now that you're hearing all this stuff about Eternals, what does that do to your expectation level? Like, I can see some people getting their expectations dropped because they really like the feel and the DNA of the MCU films. Every film, like, I don't think there's an MCU formula, but there's a DNA to them, right? And this one is very contrary to that DNA. And for, I think, some people, that's going to lessen their excitement for it. Maybe you're somebody who's been looking for Marvel to really do something wildly out of left field for them, and maybe that'll increase your excitement. I don't know. How are you guys feeling about this right now? Whatever it is, jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts.